or while reading about some organizations or hearing friends talk about something that's happening in their organizations, you realize that at many places, the correct values are not being communicated. The culture is not spreading what should be ethical. Now, this is where the leadership comes into place. Of course, leadership decides the culture. You must have heard in the podcast also where Silicon Valley firms are being talked about, and it is said that, it is so surprising that firms grow so much in terms of their operations, their revenues, their market cap, and sometimes the most basic conversations about what is right and what is wrong, or what is considered to be good in this culture and not so good in this culture. These conversations are simply not had, right? So traditionally, ethical behavior is assumed to be decided by the leadership, and then it trickles downwards, top-down communication. However, the new thought or the new research coming out is very strong in its conviction that it's not just a top-down approach that decides ethics, it's more of lateral peer ethical leadership, meaning that ethical learning, the spread of ethics, may happen horizontally or laterally and not just top to down, right? So today our focus is going to be on this concept of lateral peer ethical leadership. As I understand, most of our participants belong to middle management, so you are correctly placed to use this concept, to make the best of it and make sure that you can develop an ethical environment in your department, and then that spreads laterally to other departments. So here we're talking about peer team leaders as people working at the same hierarchical level, belonging to the same or similar departments, having regular professional contact and sharing similar responsibilities and constraints. Now, within this, the concept of ethical voice is very, very important. Ethical voice is what we just heard from Sudarshan. Identifying normatively inappropriate behaviors and speaking up to correct them, right? We may call it by different names. So far, we have heard the term, we've heard of whistleblowers, we have heard of activists, we have heard different terms being used to describe a person who speaks up against inappropriate behaviors. The new research has come up with the term called ethical voice. And this voice is not just a negative voice. It could be a positive voice. It could be what we call a promotive ethical voice, where you are suggesting improvements and encouraging ethical innovation. And it could be a prohibitive or a voice which aims to stop unethical practices. So our focus today is going to be on understanding how, as a leader, you can create, develop ethical voice, and how you can encourage your subordinates also to develop this ethical voice. This entire concept of ethical voice takes its roots in the social learning theory, which says that people learn behavior through role model. The term role model is not unfamiliar to us, right? And we know that it means observing others' behavior, interpreting the consequences, and then learning from that behavior. So in the context of ethical norms, when we observe the behavior of superiors and peers, and then we see what are the consequences of that behavior. At the beginning, somebody mentioned that, in Uber, or you must recall from the Uber podcast that certain behaviors were not being punished. The focus was only on growth, which means that certain kinds of behavior had no consequences. And social learning theory says that even a child sees what the consequences are and then learns behavior. So, of course, employees in an organization will follow this pattern too. So learning here occurs through direct experience and through observation. Moral efficacy is another concept that we are going to discuss upon. Moral efficacy is the ability to act ethically and persist under moral adversity. It is one thing to be able to identify a behavior or a trend or a phenomenon in the company that is not ethical. Ethical voice is raising your voice and calling out such behavior. And moral efficacy is continuing to act ethically and persisting even against adversity, even when, for example, again, coming back to Sudarshan's example, when you know that speaking out would lead to either firing or some other unsavory kind of consequence for you, even in that situation when you speak out, that is moral efficacy. The three primary mechanisms that cultivate moral efficacy is, of course, role modeling, because that is where you are learning your ethical values from. Shared ethical experiences. In the past, if you and your group of peers or your team of yourself and your subordinates have shared certain ethical experiences, you would want to persist with those and want the current behavior to change. And lastly, verbal persuasion, when a peer or even a subordinate uses their ethical voice to convince you that what is happening is not right, and that persuasion helps you to or motivates you to be aware of this thing that is happening which is not ethical, and then persist to try to change it. So there are a lot of practical implications, obviously, but instead of going through them theoretically, what I would like to do is link what happened with Uber and what all of us have experienced in our current or previous organizations, and then try to come up with a shared understanding of what ethical communication is. Before we begin, one question that I have. In this entire discussion of ethics and ethical leadership, why is communication important, and why are we studying this as a part of a communication course? Any answers? Yes, Tony?
Because it all depends on how you communicate.
Absolutely right. Ankur?
Because at times it could be very difficult to communicate in keeping ethics on ground.
Yes, I agree with you. It could be very difficult to communicate. Sandra?
Your intention alone wouldn't matter until and unless you express it.
Absolutely, very well said. Your intention alone will not matter unless you express it and you disseminate it throughout the organization, right? So, Ranil?
Adding to what Sandra said, to leave very little room for misinterpretation so that there is no difference between them.
Very good. One of the key rules of communication is to leave very little room for ambiguity or misinterpretation. Very good. To add to this, I'd add my 2 cents to say that any implicit or explicit communication that happens, either horizontally or laterally, can influence subordinates or peers' ethical code of conduct. Again, based on the theory of social learning and role modeling as a concept, people are always observing what is going on around them, and they are learning from it. So whatever is communicated explicitly or implicitly through behaviors, through actions such as what is rewarded, what is not rewarded, all of this communication has a very strong impact on the subordinates' viewpoint of ethics or their POV regarding ethics. Therefore, communication is so vital whenever we talk about ethics. Yes, Sudarshan, one quick point and then we'll move on. Sudarshan?
Isn't it like we have seen many examples where the communication is left ambiguous, that is with an intention to be ambiguous so that the people can interpret whatever they feel like.
In fact, that is a strategy used in a lot of organizations where, especially where things are more centralized, where the leaders want more control over every day-to-day decision also. And there I have seen that this practice of having ambiguity is put into practice, because what happens is then, because there's ambiguity, you have to get on the phone with the senior, or you have to go and ask somebody, and then that person has the power to make certain decisions based on the situation. To enable that kind of a power, the ambiguity is left. But if we are talking about wanting to create an environment where there is a decentralization, where there is lateral learning, where there is more peer-to-peer learning, I would go one step further to say that you may have a most unambiguous code of ethics written down, but even that is not enough. Just writing a code of ethics and putting it on the website or putting it on the intranet is not enough, because the remaining implicit and explicit communication that happens on a day-to-day basis is something that is a more powerful message that goes to the people working in the organization. So let's explore this through some little exercises that I've designed for you. Purvali, can you mail them? So we have 10 groups. Every group is going to be emailed a short exercise. Now, what I want you to do is use the podcast that you have heard about Uber and its toxic culture. Also reflect back upon what you have experienced in your current or previous organizations. And I will take 5 minutes to explain what each group has to do. So group 1, you would have received your email by now. All the groups 1 and 2, you will analyze Uber's toxic culture using the concept of peer leader ethical voice. Basically, what I want both these groups to do is ask yourself questions such as, what is the evidence which shows that peer ethical voice was absent or suppressed at Uber? What specifically normatively inappropriate behaviors were experienced, were exhibited, and they need to be corrected? How would the culture have been different if middle managers had been more active in terms of using their ethical voice? So basically, I want you to ask yourself these questions. They are mentioned in the email sent to you. And at the time of presentation, I want both these groups to present 3 to 4 specific examples of situations where peer ethical voice could have prevented ethical failures. If needed, you can also propose some specific communication mechanisms which would have helped to develop this peer ethical voice and to prevent the ethical failures. Are you clear, group 1 and 2? Can we put them into their breakout rooms? Purbali? Groups 1 and 2, please put them in their breakout room. अच्छा साथ में जाएंगे, ठीक है. Groups 3 and 4, I want you to evaluate the moral efficacy levels among Uber's middle management. We have just seen what moral efficacy is. So I want you to ask yourself questions such as, what do you think led to reduced moral efficacy? Why did managers not act ethically? How did the organizational environment or culture contribute to this? And what would you do to build moral efficacy at Uber? So create, a moral efficacy diagnosis tool with some questions that middle managers could use to assess their own moral efficacy, and 3 concrete actions to build it. Group 3 and 4, this is your task. Group 5 and 6, you have the same activity. Both of you will focus on ethical role model. So I want you to discuss among yourselves whether there was a presence or absence of ethical role modeling at Uber. Who could have served as ethical role models? Could middle managers have done it? Could other peer leaders have been such role models? And because the culture is so toxic, do you believe that the whole role modeling phenomenon worked in reverse? There was toxic role model and therefore there was toxic culture. What do you think happened? Based on this, I want you to design a peer ethical role model profile what are the behaviors, actions that middle managers can show to act as role models for their peers. Group 7 and 8, you will devise a communication intervention strategy, and we want a strategy which can enable peer ethical voice, which can create psychological safety for managers to voice ethical concerns, and also look at what Francis Frey did at Uber to take some tips from there. So your goal is to present a 3-month communication plan for middle managers that includes structural mechanisms, behavioral norms, and metrics or measurement approaches to track whether ethical voice is being developed or not. And lastly, group 9 and 10, I want you to synthesize all these concepts into an actionable framework for your own organization. Create a 1-page middle manager's guide to ethical peer leadership. Explain these concepts, 2 to 3 practical actions for each concept. What are the warning signs? How can middle managers spot that some ethical voice is missing, or moral role modeling is missing? And what kind of resources or support will you need from top management to be able to do this? I hope you're all clear with the exercises. Mahavirji, please put them into the breakout rooms. You have 15 minutes to discuss this, and then after that, we will all take 3 to 4 minutes to present. Each group will take 3 to 4 minutes to present whatever they have discussed, right? I will come through into all your groups. So if you have any questions, you can ask me at that point of time. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. What's up?
Alright.
यहाँ पे मैं फोटो डाल देता हूँ उसकी अपनी है ना
Do we need to present in PPT format or just verbatim? Was it
just
clear?
oral presentation करना चाहिए.
How we did it in the class.
Maybe it's good to have one slide where we can just show while we talk about it.
Yeah, can do that. पर सुना था क्या पॉडकास्ट?
किसी ने नहीं सुना.
Yeah. I have heard it a little bit.
हाँ. तो मेजरली तो मतलब आई फेल्ट कि secret code of conduct wasn't told to the managers on how to give feedback. That was one ethical issue due to which whether it wasn't an improvement based feedback that was being given to the direct reportees. It was majorly कि these 3,000 managers were giving not a very constructive feedback and just on the places कि कहाँ पे problem है, which didn't motivate the reportees, and then it cascaded through.
2 points from my side. Managers' feedbacks were not improvement oriented. They were rather rude. Just rude comments on their wrongdoings. So what Frey also was suggesting was like a 5 to 1 ratio, where you cushion the negative points with of positive points. And there was this mention of just kidding moments where they would say just an appropriate comment and say just kidding. And she even took an example.
Quite ingrained in the culture, that's what they say, like not all people.
शामिक सुनाई नहीं दे रहा.
बहुत स्लो आवाज आ रही है ब्रो.
बहुत पीछे से आ रही है दूर से.
अभी पास आ गया.
Negative. Embedded in positive.
Better now?
Yeah.
Okay, so पता नहीं क्या बोलते हो. फिस क्या?
I was saying कि वो culturally ingrained है, like that just kidding moment. That's what he has said. कि even if you want to change, if it's culturally ingrained, it gets very difficult to change. Like you can always do trial one first to reprimand, tell them that this is not correct, and then see if they keep doing it. Then you understand this is culturally ingrained. Those moments, and then it gets very difficult to completely change if this is a culture thing altogether.
Correct.
So, do we agree that
Sure.
there was a toxic role modeling cascade?
Yes.
Yes.
100%. And I think later on she said, right, when the CEO, there was a new CEO who came and then things were better. Things changed, right, at the end of the podcast.
Did she say that? मैंने नहीं सुना ये वाली चीज.
उसने बोला था एक नया CEO आया था.
After her, no? After her.
No, while she was there, I think. Later on, there was a new CEO and she said then things started changing.
After she set the premise.
Yes.
So,
how we accelerated leadership program start किया था उसने नए CEO ने आके. और टॉप मैनेजमेंट साइलेंट था, हर चीज पे साइलेंस ही था. टॉप मैनेजमेंट उनके पास पॉजिटिव भी बातें में तो कुछ बोलते रहते हैं. They were not really concerned about the cultural aspect of the. तो हम एक क्वेश्चन का आंसर देने वाले हैं ना. तीन क्वेश्चन.
So even HR was
decide
silent.
only the profile, model profile, the characteristics, behaviors, and specific actions that the middle managers should demonstrate to serve as ethical role models for their peers.
There was silence and dismissive type of attitude from top management.
हाँ वो बोल देंगे, मतलब मैं खाली वो डाल रहा हूँ कि क्या क्या चीज़ पे बात करनी है. एक तो था फीडबैक फ्रॉम मैनेजर्स was
Recording in progress.
Where? Not improvement oriented.
No clear repercussions on inappropriate comments. Or just
then-
kidding moments. Whatever.
There was also mention that you could get away if you are a top performing jerk.
हाँ. No clear repercussions.
Very good. You have a slide already in progress.
Yes, ma'am.
Great progress. Any questions about the task?
Ma'am, in terms of the model profile, the characteristics, behaviors, and specific actions that is mentioned here, that is the ideal case scenario that we have to create, right?
You have to create an ideal case scenario. And what would you recommend for a middle manager to do so that they can act as ethical role models for their peers? What kind of actions? Right?
Yeah. For their peers, not the subordinates.
And also not the top.
So, no, we are talking about lateral learning. So, you could include subordinates as well, because in our setup, usually in our Indian context, we are most concerned about influencing the subordinates as well. So, you could include peers and subordinates both when you are making the plan.
But ma'am, typically, if there's a toxic culture, it typically comes from the top, right? Like, so for example, a CEO himself or even the top leadership brings a toxic culture. For a middle manager, we typically are basically sandwiched between both the layers. It gets
Both
very,
the layers,
even,
yes.
even if we bring a change, it gets very difficult to change the attitude of the top
It
leaders.
is. You're very right, in fact. But the assumption we are working with here is that there is now. So even if you look at Uber, for example, and the podcast, the consultant was brought in at the highest, from the highest level.
Yeah.
we are assuming a situation where the problem has been recognized at the top management level, and now we are trying to do something about it. And what is the crucial role that middle managers can play? Right? We'll come to this, we'll discuss this when you present, your task, and we'll try to see how you can work towards creating an ethical environment when you don't have too much support from the top management. Yeah. Mamaji, next one.
There was one instance also कि जब there were meetings held, then senior executives were like messaging each other rather than listening to what the person is saying.
But उसमें ethical issue क्या था that I couldn't understand. That was probably because they couldn't speak up in the meeting. इसलिए एक दूसरे से they were discussing.
बिहेवियरल इशू था, मतलब बोल तो सकते थे सीनियर मैनेजर्स तक।
हाँ, that is not space, safe space नहीं है मतलब।
हाँ, right.
Okay.
Ten minutes left. 10 minutes.
ठीक है, आई थिंक ये 5 पॉइंट इनफ है। अभी ये बना लेते हैं कि एथिकल रोल मॉडल प्रोफाइल क्या होना चाहिए।
और एक कैस्केडिंग इफेक्ट बनाया, हाउ डिड टॉक्सिक रोल मॉडलिंग कैस्केड थ्रू द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, वो उसको कैसे।
तो एक there was one pointer also, I think, I don't know if you can add it somewhere, but just remember that Uber had roughly 3,000 managers.
Correct.
But majority of them were promoted due to rapid growth, but had zero training on how to lead. So the managers did not have, I mean, वो in-house उनको lead किया, मतलब they were promoted, but they did not have actually any training on how to lead, and probably that could also be a reason which we can think about rectifying. तो rectification में वो probably डाल सकते हैं कि ideally
that doesn't come under ethical problems, right? That can be a solution.
No, I'm talking about solution. I'm just saying this point. Remember this point. We can use it in the rectify. When we are asked to give a solution, we can just probably say that we could have done a training for them so that at least they have some basic idea on how to lead. At least a root comment wala part could have been solved by that.
On the profile, one point is that for ethical role modeling, the managers should act inconsistent to their values even when it is inconvenient. So that is something a model profile should have, and they should own up to their actions even when the results could be not so easy, or what should we say, not well accustomed to what we want to, or not pleasing others. Even when the results are not pleasing, they should have the courage to take those actions, I think, for ethical role modeling, because there will be situations where one has to take an action that is not very normal.
And for ethical role model, I think that they should first accept about their culture, that is there something wrong or not.
That I think, Professor, that is what she was saying. The top management has started doing something. That is the reason they have hired the. So उसमें what I think is now that we have received, I mean, Uber has received a direction from the top leaders. The main role by middle managers is to imbibe those directions. I mean, make it a how do I say? Make it very normal, and I mean, we can make it as a daily behavior. So all what I wanted to say is that एक guidance मिल चुकी है from the top management, and it is middle manager's responsibility that it should become a daily behavior.
Put to practice.
And yeah, put to practice kind of.
Samanth, we have got 3 questions and a profile. Sorry, what are you? पहला वाला क्या था? You're just writing problems. There are, if you see, there are 3 questions you have to answer. Slide पे जाओगे ना?
हाँ, first वाला है who should have been serving as an ethical role model for middle managers, तो top management.
हाँ, मतलब top management and also certain peers should also be, right? Peers as well. Peers who were already managers, right? They were 3,000 में से there would be some, right, who were already experienced managers probably.
Tenured managers maybe.
Yeah, tenured managers and peers who were tenured managers, yeah. नहीं, तो you are adding to, ये अलग है ना, ये ethical role model profile है.
अलग स्लाइड बना दो क्या?
वाइज है ना, मतलब फर्स्ट वाली स्लाइड में जाके क्वेश्चन लिख दे बस खाली कि 1 2 3 उस टाइप से कि
फर्स्ट स्लाइड होगा ना 3 क्वेश्चन के, मतलब आई फेल दैट 4 चीज है ना, मतलब एक एथिकल रोल मोबाइल प्रोफाइल और 3 सवाल है.
ठीक है.
7 minutes.
That is to discuss, and finally we have to present the ethical role model profile.
Exactly.
ओके.
वो आंसर नहीं करने क्वेश्चंस, मतलब
करेक्ट.
हाँ.
बट पूछेंगे ना हमें तुमने क्या डिस्कस किया.
हाँ, तो ये तो
तो
बता.
उसके लिए पहले वाली स्लाइड थी ना.
इसको डुप्लीकेट करके समर्थ सेकंड को डुप्लीकेट करके वो कर दो ना, डिलीट कर दो नीचे वाला.
सेकंड को डुप्लीकेट करके रे.
सेकंड को डुप्लीकेट करके ना, जस्ट ऊपर वाली सेकंड स्लाइड से ये वाले हटा दो पॉइंट्स 3 4 5 वाले एथिकल रोल मॉडल हटा दो. वी कैन जस्ट आंसर द 3 क्वेश्चंस हियर.
Yeah, correct.
And third slide could be the role model profile.
Cool.
What behavior?
ठीक है, ये हटा दो first point.
Positive ethical role modeling in this context.
ठीक है.
सेकंड क्वेश्चन है.
सेकंड क्वेश्चन क्या है?
What behaviors from peer leaders would constitute positive ethical role modeling in this context?
एक तो होगा inclusive decision making, है ना, जहाँ पे मतलब everybody thought the same way in Uber, right? So probably
ट्रेनिंग का डाल देते ना यहाँ पे फिर.
हाँ, ट्रेनिंग का भी डाल सकते हैं. Training of managers to do what? भाई ना, to basically
Act inclusive.
But
they are asking
feedback.
They are asking
In ethical
behavior
leadership
from
and
peer
communication.
leaders.
Yeah, ट्रेनिंग नहीं होगा.
Behavior ये ट्रेनिंग थोड़ी आएगा इसके अंदर.
ट्रेनिंग नहीं आएगा. What behavior from peer leaders?
I would say accepting mistakes or dismissal behavior.
Feedback.
वही.
And not blaming others.
Refusing to earn or
Constructive feedback and give constructive feedback. Yeah.
Being honest and open and being transparent.
being vocal when someone is not using, ethical lines.
Yeah.
Being able to speak up when it's not easy.
Empathy भी डाल दो कहीं अगर जगह मिल रहा है.
Being empathetic.
लिख लो.
ठीक है, इतना बहुत है.
अगला पढ़ो क्वेश्चन.
अगला क्वेश्चन लगा.
How
did toxic role modeling cascade through the organization? Cascading effect.
I think इसमें वो लिख सकते हैं ना कि 3,000 managers थे. So many of them were not trained. पहले तो they were in house. So whatever the peer did, the others also thought that was the culture, or that was the way to do.
I think the first slide में है.
First
slide में जो points है, I think उससे बन सकता है.
Cascading effect मतलब वही कि पहले top level से शुरू कैसे हुआ, वो कैसे percolate हुआ down, और फिर वो आगे से उसी फॉर्म में लूप में चल रहा है.
Basically, low-level managers saw senior leaders acting this way and mimicked it.
और वो और senior managers के
not just senior managers but top performers also. They were kind of their role models.
This was accepted and nobody questioned, and they were promoted even when they were not ethical. तो ये सब चीज़ें
सही है होली ग्रेल सही लिखे हो सही है
सही है ना ये ठीक है ना most of the managers were not trained top down and on how peers acted seemed to be the holy grail.
Yeah.
5 minutes left.
ठीक है
हो गया
ये भी हो गया अब
अभी
ethical हाँ
कोर कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स क्या होना चाहिए था हमने तो लिख ही दिया मैनेजर्स क्या था हमें कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स
even if it's not easy
even in adverse conditions and adverse
Even in-
situations.
ठीक है
हाँ
manager
Create and propagate a safe space for people to speak up.
Escalate any misconduct.
एक second Sandra what were you saying?
Create and propagate a safe space to speak up. To speak up, to speak their opinions, basically. That's what I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, and also I think celebrate team success rather than just top performers जो हमारे यहाँ पे हो रहा था
And escalate misconduct.
how will you plan to take actions it's not easy in a condition that was
I think third में we can add
एक
respect
second,
the others
अयान क्या बोल रहे थे आप?
perspectives, dignity and
मैंने लिखा पूरा था escalate misconduct. Document and escalate misconduct. मतलब एक्शन लेना दूसरी चीज है लेकिन वो
हाँ तो यहाँ पे डाल देते ना safe space to escalate.
नहीं वो तो ओपिनियन के लिए है कि दूसरे के ओपिनियंस के लिए मतलब अभी मीटिंग में क्या होता है कि लोग ओपिनियन नहीं दे पाएगा ना अपना
To speak up.
हाँ टू स्पीक अप
Speak up and give feedback.
फीडबैक या ओपिनियन जो भी
ठीक है और बताओ फिफ्थ एक पॉइंट और डाल देता है
हो गया ना आई थिंक ये क्या
Document and वही बोला ना document and escalate or intervene rather.
escalate misconducts.
क्या
Document and escalate misconducts. Escalate
Now, if you look into the last point, design a ethical role model profile.
वही तो कर रहे हैं
Should be
ये
not
सब-
kept in tabular format. ठीक है
तो ये वाला पॉइंट भी अच्छा है मेंटर मेंटी बडी सिस्टम ये हमारे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में होता है
बट अगर तुम्हारा मेंटर
ही खराब है
है ना तो it should be-
Samad, वो inference निकाल from the third page.
हाँ
Can you add the word respect, Samarth, in point number 3? Provide respect to each other's perspective. Or that, whatever. Give that.
खत्म होने वाला बस टाइम आ गया
ऐसे भी लिख सकते हैं क्या रिवॉर्ड पीपल हु स्पीक अप फॉर दिस एथिकल बिहेवियर
ठीक
Recording in progress.
So welcome back from the breakout rooms. Before we proceed, just one announcement that I'd like to make. Is everybody back?
Yes.
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 Okay. So this announcement is regarding attendance. Attendance is obviously mandatory. And in terms of the grading pattern, what we have decided is that instead of mere attendance, we would be rewarding class participation. So meaningful participation is any day better than simple attendance. I'm sure all of you would agree, right? So do keep that in mind. You have a 10% grade for class participation. I don't need to say that because from the first session, everybody has been wonderfully participative. But just wanted to formally announce this so that you know that this is how we are going to be doing the grading, right? All right, let's get started. So, I was going through all the breakout rooms and I saw that there was a really intense discussion going on.